The flame shook as if it already knew this night would not be simple. One small candle stood in the middle of the plain cupcake, its light barely touching the wide, silent kitchen. The mansion was asleep, wrapped in polished marble and expensive quiet, but she was still awake. She always was. She leaned closer, her hands folded, her shoulders tired from a day that had started before sunrise and would only truly end when everyone else felt comfortable enough to forget she existed. This was her birthday, and the only witness was the soft hum of the refrigerator and the sound of her own breathing. She didn't make a wish out loud. Wishes had a way of sounding foolish when you'd learn not to expect them to come true. Instead, she watched the candle burn and thought about how many years she had spent in this house, walking the same halls, cleaning the same rooms, hearing the same laughter that never included her. To the world, she was just a maid. To the staff, she was dependable. To the billionaire who owned the mansion, she was efficient, quiet, and invisible. Or so she believed. She had bought the cupcake earlier that afternoon, hiding it in her bag like it was something forbidden. It wasn't fancy, just chocolate with too much icing, but it felt like proof that she still existed beyond the uniform. She lit the candle with a match she found in the pantry, careful not to make a sound. This kitchen had seen grand dinners, powerful guests, deals worth millions. Tonight, it held only her in a moment she had waited for all year. As she closed her eyes, memories pressed in. The long nights she scrubbed floors while the city slept. The way people talked around her instead of to her. The way she learned every corner of the mansion but was never truly allowed to belong in any of them. She had learned to carry her pride quietly, to keep her pain hidden behind polite smiles. Tonight, though, standing alone in the kitchen on her birthday, it felt heavier than usual. She opened her eyes again, just in time to hear footsteps. Her heart jumped. No one was supposed to be awake. The billionaire never came down this late. The guests were gone. The security staff stayed outside. For a second, she thought she had imagined it, but then the footsteps grew closer, steady and sure, like someone who knew exactly where they were going. She reached for the candle, panicking, unsure whether to blow it out or let it burn. The flame trembled again as if warning her. Before she could decide, a voice cut through the quiet. "Why are the kitchen lights on?" She froze. He stood at the entrance, tall and composed even in the soft light, his presence filling the room without effort. The billionaire, the man whose name appeared in headlines, whose decisions moved markets, whose life seemed untouched by ordinary worries. He looked different tonight, less guarded, his jacket gone, his sleeves rolled up. Still, the power around him was unmistakable. "I'm sorry, sir," she said quickly, already stepping back, her hand instinctively moving to hide the cupcake. "I was just finishing up." His eyes didn't move to the counters or the floors. They went straight to the small flame. The room felt suddenly too quiet. "That's a birthday candle," he said, not asking, just stating it. She swallowed. "Yes, sir." "For who?" "For me," she replied softly, the words barely louder than the candle's crackle. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or curiosity. He looked at the clock on the wall, then back at her. "It's past midnight." "Yes, sir. Today is my birthday." She expected him to nod politely and leave, to return to his world where birthdays were celebrated with parties and cameras and applause. Instead, he stepped closer. The marble floor echoed under his feet, each sound making her more aware of how small she felt standing there in her work shoes and faded uniform. "You were going to celebrate alone?" he asked. She forced a small smile. "I'm used to it." The answer seemed to land heavier than she intended. He didn't speak right away. He looked around the kitchen at the empty chairs, the spotless counters, the untouched space. Then he looked back at her, really looked this time, as if seeing her for the first time. "What's your name?" he asked. She told him. He repeated it slowly, testing how it sounded in his mouth. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The candle continued to burn, wax dripping down the side, time slipping away. "You should make a wish," he said suddenly. She shook her head. "It's okay, sir. I should get back to work." "No," he said more firmly now. "Make a wish." Something about his tone made her pause. She leaned forward and blew out the candle. Smoke curled into the air, carrying with it all the wishes she never dared to say. She expected that to be the end of it. A strange moment, then back to normal. But he didn't leave. Instead, his phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced at the screen, his face tightening for just a second, then relax again. He looked at her, standing there unsure what to do with her hands, her heart still racing. "Come to me now," he said. The words hit her like a sudden drop. "Sir, not here," he added, turning slightly, as if already expecting her to follow. "My study." Her mind raced. She had cleaned that room countless times, but had never been invited inside while he was there. Questions piled up in her head. Had she done something wrong? Was she about to lose her job? Or was this some kind of test she didn't understand? "Yes, sir," she said, because that was what she always said, as she followed him out of the kitchen. Leaving behind the empty plate and melted wax, she felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. The mansion's hall seemed longer than usual, the silence thicker, charged with something she couldn't name. Behind closed doors, power lived comfortably. Secrets did too. And as she stepped toward his study, she had no idea that this birthday, which had started with a single candle in a quiet kitchen, was about to change everything she thought she knew about herself, about him, and about the place she thought she had in this world. The hallway felt colder as they walked. The lights were dimmed to a soft glow, casting long shadows along the walls lined with framed photographs. She had dusted those frames hundreds of times, wiping away fingerprints from faces she didn't recognize, but everyone else seemed to admire. Powerful men, elegant women, charity events, celebrations, proof of a life lived loudly, while hers stayed quiet in the background. She followed a few steps behind him, careful to keep her eyes lowered. Her heart beat faster with every step. The sound echoed in her ears, mixing with the memory of his words. "Come to me now." It didn't sound angry. It didn't sound kind either. It sounded final, like a door closing behind her before she had a chance to turn back. The study door opened with a soft click. Warm light spilled out, revealing dark with shelves filled with books she had never been allowed to touch. The room smelled faintly of coffee and leather. This was where decisions were made, where phone calls changed lives, where contracts were signed and broken. She had always cleaned this room early in the morning, when the air still felt empty. Seeing it now, with him standing inside, made it feel completely different. He stepped in and gestured for her to follow. She did, stopping just inside the doorway, unsure whether to move further. The door closed behind her, not loudly, but enough to make her flinch. "You can sit," he said, pointing to a chair across from his desk. She hesitated before sitting, her back straight, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Old habits from years of knowing her place. He watched her for a moment, as if noticing details he had never cared to see before. The way her uniform sleeves were slightly worn, the faint tiredness in her eyes, the way she held herself like someone used to shrinking. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. "Almost 7 years, sir." 7 years, he repeated quietly. "And today is your birthday." "Yes." He leaned back in his chair, his fingers resting together, his gaze steady but unreadable. "Do you always celebrate like that? Alone in the kitchen?" She swallowed. "I usually don't celebrate at all." "Why?" She wasn't sure how to answer. The truth felt too personal for this room. "I didn't think it mattered." His jaw tightened slightly, a reaction so small she almost missed it. "Everyone matters." The words hung in the air, heavy with something she couldn't understand. For a man like him, saying that felt strange. For her, hearing it felt dangerous. He stood and walked toward the bookshelf, pulling out a folder. As he opened it, her stomach tightened. Files meant records. Records meant judgment. She wondered what her files said about her. Dependable. Quiet. No complaints. Easy to overlook. "Do you know why I keep files on everyone who works here?" he asked, still facing away. She shook her head. "No, sir. Because trust doesn't come from words. It comes from patterns." He turned back toward her, the folder still in his hand. He didn't open it. He just held it, as if deciding something. You've never missed a day without reason. You've never asked for anything extra. You've never caused trouble. She felt her throat tighten. I just do my job. That's exactly it, he said. You do more than your job. Silence stretched between them. Her pulse quickened. She couldn't tell where this was going, and that uncertainty made her uneasy. Compliments in a place like this often came before expectations. He placed a folder on the desk and didn't open it. Instead, he asked, Do you know anything about this house before it became what it is now? She thought for a moment. Only what I've seen in old photos, sir. This house belonged to my parents, he said. Before the money, before the business. She hadn't expected that. He rarely spoke about his personal life. Staff weren't supposed to know those details. It must have been very different, she said carefully. It was quieter, he replied, and lonelier. That word surprised her. Lonelier. She looked up at him for the first time since sitting down. His expression wasn't cold now. It was distant, like he was looking at something far away. I grew up watching people work for my family, he continued. They were around all the time. They knew everything about us. And yet, we never really saw them. Her chest tightened. The room felt smaller. I told myself I would be different, he said. But somewhere along the way, I stopped paying attention. Her breath caught slightly, but she stayed silent. He looked at her again, his eyes sharper now. Tonight, I noticed something I should have seen years ago. She didn't know what to say. A mix of fear and curiosity settled deep in her stomach. She had spent her whole life avoiding attention, learning how to blend into the background. Being seen now felt like standing under a bright light with nowhere to hide. Do you know why that candle bothered me? He asked. She shook her head slowly. Because no one should feel invisible on their birthday, he said. Her fingers tightened together. Emotion threatened to rise, but she forced it back. She had learned not to cry in front of employers. Tears complicated things. He checked his watch and then glanced toward the door, as if aware of time pressing in from somewhere beyond the walls. There are things happening in this house you don't see, he said quietly. Things I've ignored for too long. Her heart skipped. Sir, you hear things, he continued. You notice patterns. People think you don't, but you do. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. When you work in a place long enough, you notice changes. His eyes narrowed slightly. Have you noticed anything unusual lately? Her mind raced. Late-night phone calls. Closed-door meetings. Tension among the staff. Whispers that stopped when she entered a room. She had learned to pretend she didn't hear them, but they stayed with her. I notice when people are worried, she said slowly, even when they don't say it. A faint smile touched his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. That's what I thought. He walked back to his desk and leaned forward, resting his hands on the surface. I asked you to come here tonight because I need someone I can trust. Someone who listens. Someone who doesn't take sides. Her heart pounded. I'm just a maid, sir. He straightened. You're much more than that. The word sent a chill through her. Being more often came with consequences. I won't ask you to do anything tonight, he said, his voice lower now. But from this moment on, things may change. She nodded slowly, unsure whether that was a promise or a warning. As she stood to leave, he added, Happy birthday. The words followed her down the hallway as she returned to her small room at the edge of the mansion. She lay awake long after, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. The candle, the study, his questions. Somewhere in the house, doors were closing. Decisions were being made. And for the first time since she stepped into this world of wealth and power, she had the unsettling feeling that she was no longer invisible. Whatever was coming next, it had already begun. The next morning, the mansion felt different. Nothing had changed on the surface. The floor still shined. The air still smelled faintly of polish and fresh coffee. But something underneath it all had shifted. She felt it the moment she stepped out of her small room, like a quiet tension woven into the walls. It followed her as she moved through the corridors, pushing her cart, doing the work she had done 1,000 times before. People looked at her a second longer than usual. Not everyone, just enough for her to notice. The head housekeeper paused mid-sentence when she entered the laundry room. Two security guards lowered their voices near the back entrance. She told herself she was imagining it. That one late-night conversation hadn't changed anything, but the weight in her chest said otherwise. She passed the study door and slowed without meaning to. It was closed, just like always, but now it felt like something behind it was watching. She turned away quickly and kept moving. Whatever the billionaire had meant by change, she wasn't sure she wanted to find out. By midday, she noticed the first real shift. A sealed envelope sat on her cleaning cart, her name written neatly across the front. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Messages usually came through supervisors, not left quietly like this. She glanced around the hallway before opening it. Inside was a short note, written in careful, firm handwriting. Please come to the study at 7 this evening. No signature. None was needed. Her heart sank and lifted at the same time. 7 years of routine had taught her how to disappear, but now the routine was breaking. She folded the note and tucked it into her pocket, forcing herself to finish her tasks as if nothing had happened. The rest of the day passed slowly. Every clock seemed louder than usual. Every door closing echoed longer. When evening came, she stood in her room, smoothing her uniform, checking her reflection in the mirror. She looked the same. Tired eyes, calm face, but something inside her felt stretched, like a thread pulled too tight. At exactly 7, she knocked. The door opened almost immediately. He was already inside, standing near the window, the city lights glowing behind him. The room felt heavier than it had the night before. "Come in," he said. She did, standing where she had before, unsure whether sitting was allowed this time. "I won't keep you long," he said. "I just want you to listen." She nodded. "There are people close to me who don't want things to change," he continued. "People who benefit from silence." Her stomach tightened. "I don't understand." "You don't need to," he said. "Not yet." He picked up a tablet from the desk and turned it toward her. On the screen were names, dates, numbers. Some were blurred. Some weren't. She recognized a few faces. Senior staff, executives, people who smiled at charity events and spoke about values. "These are things I should have questioned earlier," he said. "Money moving where it shouldn't. Decisions made without my knowledge." She felt her breath catch. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you move through this house without being noticed," he replied. "You hear what others ignore. And because you have no reason to protect anyone here." The truth of that settled heavily between them. She had no alliances, no power, no shield. "I don't want you to investigate," he said quickly, as if reading her fear. "I just want you to stay aware. If you hear something that doesn't sit right, you tell me. And if I don't," she asked quietly. He looked at her for a long moment. "Then nothing changes. But if you do, you may help stop something before it becomes worse." She nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the choice pressing down on her. This wasn't part of her job description. This wasn't safe. But neither was pretending everything was fine. As she left the study, she felt eyes on her. In the hallway mirror, she caught a glimpse of someone standing at the far end, watching. When she turned, the space was empty. Over the next few days, the tension grew. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Meetings stretched late into the night. Phones rang more often. She heard fragments of arguments, sharp whispers about loyalty and risk. Someone mentioned her name once, spoken quickly, like a mistake. One afternoon, while cleaning a guest room, she found a document tucked beneath a drawer. It wasn't meant to be there. It listed transactions, signatures she recognized from the study screen. Her hands shook as she placed it back, her mind racing. She didn't take it. She didn't photograph it. She just remembered. That night, she lay awake, listening to footsteps in the hallway. A door creaked. Voices murmured. She wondered who else knew she had been called into the study. She wondered how far this went. The billionaire, meanwhile, felt the pressure closing in from another side. Advisors questioned his recent focus. Old partners grew distant. One warned him quietly to leave things alone. He smiled and nodded, but the warning stayed with him. Power protected him, but it also isolated him. Trust was a rare thing. And then there was her. He watched her through small details. The way she listened, the way she didn't react too quickly. He saw strength there, shaped by years of being overlooked. It made her valuable. It also made her vulnerable. Late one evening, she returned to her room to find the door slightly open. Her heart raced. Inside, everything looked the same, but the air felt wrong. On her bed lay a single object, her birthday candle. Unlit. No note. No explanation. She picked it up, her hands cold. Someone had been there. Someone wanted her to know they were watching. Downstairs, the billionaire stood alone in his study, staring at the city lights, aware that whatever he had started could no longer be undone. Lines had been crossed. Attention had been drawn. And somewhere between loyalty and danger, between silence and truth, a woman who had once been invisible now stood at the center of a quiet storm, unsure who would strike first. Sleep stopped coming easily after that night. Every sound felt louder. Every shadow felt closer. She kept the candle hidden at the back of her drawer, wrapped in a cloth like something fragile and dangerous. Whoever had left it there hadn't needed to say a word. The message was clear. You are being watched. She moved through the mansion more carefully now, slowing her steps, listening without appearing to listen. She noticed how certain doors were suddenly locked, how security schedules shifted without explanation, how the head housekeeper avoided her eyes. Power, she realized, didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it pressed down quietly, waiting for you to bend. One afternoon, while polishing the railing near the West Wing, she overheard two men speaking in low voices. They didn't see her at first. Her uniform made her part of the background. She knows more than she should, one of them said. How much? The other asked. Enough to be a problem. Her breath caught. She kept her head down, her hands moving steadily, praying they wouldn't turn around. When their footsteps faded, her knees nearly gave way. They were talking about her. There was no doubt now. That evening, she went to study without being called. Her heart pounded as she knocked, half expecting the door not to open. But it did. He looked surprised to see her, then serious. What is it? They know, she said quietly. Someone knows you spoke to me. His jaw tightened. Did they threaten you? Not directly, she replied. But they're watching. He nodded slowly, absorbing it. I suspected as much. You should be careful, she added. They don't see me as a person, just a risk. His eyes met hers, sharp and focused. You're not alone in this. The words sounded reassuring, but she wasn't sure she believed them. Power could protect, but it could also disappear when things turned ugly. Over the next few days, the tension climbed higher. Meetings were canceled without explanation. Guests arrived unexpectedly. The mansion filled with unfamiliar faces. Smiles were tight. Laughter sounded forced. It felt like everyone was waiting for something to happen. Late one night, she was asked to serve tea in a private meeting room. As she placed the cups down, she caught fragments of conversation. Numbers. Deadlines. A name repeated more than once. Her name. She left the room with her hands shaking. That same night, the billionaire received an anonymous message on his phone. A simple line of text. End this now, or she pays the price. He stared at the screen, anger flaring beneath his calm. This was no longer just about money or control. Lines had been crossed. He deleted the message but didn't forget it. The next morning, he called for a full internal review. Official, public, risky. It sent shockwaves through the staff. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some people welcomed it. Others panicked. She felt the change immediately. A security guard began walking her to her room at night. Her work area shifted closer to public spaces. Protection, he said. But protection also meant visibility. One afternoon, she found a note tucked into her pocket. No handwriting, just printed words. You should stop helping him. Her hands trembled as she crumpled it. Fear rose in her chest, but so did something else. Resolve. She had lived her whole life being careful, being quiet, being small. It hadn't protected her. Maybe nothing would. She went to the study again that evening. "They're escalating," she said. "This won't stop." He nodded. "I know." "Then why keep going?" she asked. He looked tired then, truly tired, because stopping now would mean they win. "And because this started the moment I saw you alone in that kitchen." The word stayed with her as she walked away. That candle, that moment, a simple act of kindness that had cracked open a world of secrets. The pressure built day by day. Evidence surfaced and vanished. Allies turned quiet. A key witness backed out at the last minute. The mansion felt like a house holding its breath. Then came the night everything tightened. A formal dinner was held. Important guests. Media attention. Appearances to maintain. She worked the event, moving through the room with practiced ease. Though her nerves were on fire, she felt eyes on her constantly. Halfway through the evening, the lights flickered. Just once, enough to be noticed. She felt a hand brush her sleeve. A voice whispered, "This is your last chance." She turned, but the crowd swallowed the speaker hole. Across the room, the billionaire caught her eye. Something unspoken passed between them. Warning, trust, fear. The light steadied. The music resumed. Laughter filled the space again. But beneath it all, something was breaking. As she carried a tray toward the back hall, a door she had never seen open before stood ajar. Inside, voices argued in sharp, urgent tones. Names. Dates. A plan moving faster than expected. Her heart raced. This was it. Whatever they were planning, it was happening now. She stepped closer, just enough to hear one sentence that made her blood run cold. "She won't see tomorrow if he doesn't back down." Her breath caught in her throat as footsteps approached from behind. And in that moment, standing between secrets and danger, she knew the next choice she made would change everything. Her body went still as the footsteps closed in behind her. For a split second, she considered running, but instinct told her not to. Sudden movements drew attention. Attention could be fatal. She forced herself to breathe normally and turned just as a man in a dark suit stepped out of the shadowed hallway. "Wrong turn," he said casually, his smile thin and practiced. "Yes," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "I was looking for the service stairs." He studied her face, as if measuring how much she knew. "Those doors should stay closed tonight." "I didn't know," she said. "I'll go back." He stepped aside, letting her pass, but his eyes followed her until she disappeared into the crowd. Only then did she realize her palms were slick with sweat. She didn't return to the party floor. Instead, she took the long route through the service corridors, her mind racing. "They won't see tomorrow." The words echoed in her head like a ticking clock. This wasn't just pressure anymore. This was a warning. Or a promise. She needed to tell him. Now. But when she reached the study, the door was locked. Panic flared in her chest. He never locked it during events. She knocked softly at first, then harder. No answer. Her heart sank. If he wasn't there, where was he? A sudden vibration in her pocket made her jump. Her phone. She rarely received messages. A known number. "Stay where you are. Do not trust anyone." Her breath caught. Another message followed almost immediately. Including him. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Including him? Her thoughts spiraled. Had this all been a lie? Was she just a pawn in a much larger game between powerful people? Before she could process it, the lights in the hallway dimmed, then returned. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She felt exposed, standing there alone. Footsteps echoed again, faster this time. She moved, not toward the party, not toward the study. She followed instinct down a narrow corridor that led to an old section of the mansion rarely used anymore. Storage rooms, archives, forgotten spaces, places where secrets like to hide. Behind her, voices called out. She went this way. Her heart hammered as she slipped into a room and closed the door quietly. Inside, dust-coated shelves stacked with boxes and old files. She pressed herself against the wall, barely daring to breathe. The door handle rattled once. Then footsteps faded. She slid down to the floor, her legs shaking. Whatever was happening tonight had gone beyond control. Someone was moving pieces fast, and she was no longer just watching. She was in the middle of it, across the mansion. The billionaire stood in a private office with two men he had trusted for years. Their expressions were calm, but their words were sharp. "You're pushing too hard," one said. "This review will destroy everything." "That's the point," he replied. "If it needs destroying." The other man leaned forward. "You're risking lives." His eyes darkened. "No, I'm exposing people who already did." A phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at the screen and felt his chest tighten. A missed alert. Security breach in the West Wing. Her name flashed through his mind. He pushed back from the desk. "Meeting's over." As he left, one of the men exchanged a look with the other. A silent understanding passed between them. "She's become a problem," one murmured. "Yes," the other replied. "And problems get removed." Back in the storage room, she found a folder half pulled from a box. Curiosity warred with fear. She opened it just enough to see photographs. Older ones. The billionaire's parents. The mansion decades ago. Staff lined up behind them. Her breath caught. In one photo, near the edge, stood a young woman who looked unsettlingly familiar. Same eyes, same face shape, wearing a maid's uniform. Her mother. The realization hit her like a wave. Why would her mother be here? She had never spoken about this place. Never mentioned working for a wealthy family. Why hide something like that? A memory surfaced. Her mother's warnings. Never trust powerful people. Never let them know too much about you. Her phone buzzed again. You were never meant to be here. Her hands shook as another message appeared. Your mother understood that. She paid the price. A chill spread through her body. Paid the price how? Before she could respond, the door creaked open. The billionaire stood there, breathless, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. Relief flashed across his face, quickly replaced by concern. "We need to talk," he said urgently. "Now." She stood slowly, clutching the folder to her chest. "I think we already should have." He noticed the folder and froze. "Where did you get that?" "It has my mother in it," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "Why?" His silence answered louder than words. Footsteps echoed again, closer this time. Multiple. Fast. He reached for her arm. "We don't have time. You need to trust me." She pulled back slightly. "Someone told me not to, including you." Pain crossed his face. "They're trying to turn you against me." "Or warn me," she said. "Because this isn't just about money, is it?" The lights flickered again, longer this time. Voices shouted orders somewhere down the hall. Security alarms chimed faintly, then stopped. He lowered his voice. "Your mother knew something she shouldn't have. So, do you now?" Her heart pounded. "And what happens to people like us?" Before he could answer, the door at the far end of the corridor slammed open. "Found them." The words echoed through the space as shadows rushed toward them. She backed away, clutching the folder, her mind racing. Trust him or run. Stay silent or speak out. Every choice carried risk. As a room filled with voices and tension snapped tight, one truth became clear. Her birthday candle hadn't just lit up a quiet kitchen. It had ignited a fire that powerful people were desperate to put out. And whatever happened next would expose everything. The room filled with tension as the men rushed in, their footsteps sharp against the floor, their faces tight with urgency. Everything moved at once, voices overlapping, orders being shouted, hands reaching for doors and radios. She stood frozen for a second, clutching the folder, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might give her away. "Stop," the billionaire said firmly, stepping forward. The men hesitated. Power still listened to his voice, even now. "This ends tonight," he said. "All of it." One of the men laughed softly. "You really think you're still in control?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, holding it up. "Everything you've been hiding, everything you tried to bury, is already out there. Documents, recordings, transactions. I scheduled the release hours ago." The room went silent. "You're bluffing," Another man said, but his voice lacked confidence. "I'm not," the billionaire replied. "The system is automated. You can't stop it." She stared at him, shock mixing with fear. He had planned this. He had known things would come to this point. Sirens sounded faintly in the distance, growing louder with each second. Someone swore under their breath. One of the men backed toward the door, panic flickering across his face. "This isn't what we agreed to," someone said. "You agreed to protect yourselves," the billionaire answered. "At any cost." The words hit her hard. At any cost. She looked at the folder in her hands, at her mother's face frozen in time. She finally understood. Her mother hadn't just worked here. She had seen something. Something dangerous. "What about her?" One of the men snapped, pointing at her. "She knows too much." The billionaire turned to her then, his expression softer but heavy with regret. "That's why I brought you here tonight. To make sure you walk out alive." Her breath caught. "You knew this would happen." "Yes," he said quietly. "And I knew you'd be strong enough to face it." The sirens were close now. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, painting the walls in restless colors. The men exchanged looks, calculating, desperate. "It's over," the billionaire said. "For all of you." Security doors burst open. Authorities flooded the corridor, voices firm, controlled. Hands were raised. No one resisted. Power drained from a room as quickly as it had filled it. She stood there as the chaos settled, her body trembling, her mind struggling to keep up. Just hours ago, she had been a maid lighting a candle alone in a quiet kitchen. Now, everything had changed. As the men were escorted away, one of them turned back and looked at her, his eyes cold. "Your mother tried to be a hero, too." She stiffened, but before she could respond, he was gone. The billionaire approached her slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, "for everything, for what your mother lost, for what you were pulled into." "What really happened to her?" she asked, her voice barely steady. He hesitated, then spoke. "She uncovered proof that people close to my family were exploiting the business, hurting people quietly. When she spoke up, they made it look like she left on her own. She disappeared because it was safer that way." "Safer for who?" she asked. "For you," he replied. The truth landed hard. All those years of silence, of struggle, of unanswered questions. Her mother hadn't abandoned her. She had protected her. The authorities finished their work and left. The mansion grew quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now, one filled with aftermath instead of secrets. "You'll be safe now," he said. "I'll make sure of it." She looked at him, really looked at him, a man with power, with regret, with choices he could never undo. "I don't want protection," she said. "I want the truth to stay out there." "It will," he promised. "Everything will." She turned to leave, exhaustion settling into her bones. As she reached the hallway, he called after her. "There's something else you should know." She stopped. "Your mother didn't disappear completely," he said. "She stayed close, watching from a distance, making sure you were okay." Her heart skipped. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, a voice spoke from the doorway behind them. "She means I kept my promise." She turned slowly. A woman stood there, older now, lines etched by time and sacrifice, but unmistakable. The same eyes, the same face. "Mom," she whispered. Tears blurred her vision as they closed the distance between them. Arms wrapped around her, warm and real and long overdue. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there," her mother said softly. "But I never stopped watching over you." She held on tightly, sobbing quietly into her mother's shoulder. The years of silence broke all at once. Behind them, the billionaire watched, his expression unreadable. As dawn crept into the windows, the mansion stood exposed, its secrets finally dragged into the light. Careers would fall, headlines would explode, power would shift, and in the middle of it all, a woman who had once been invisible now stood with her truth, her family, and a future that no longer belonged to anyone else. But as they walked out together, her mother leaned close and whispered, "This isn't the end. Some truths take longer to surface." She looked back at the mansion one last time, the place where her birthday candle had changed everything. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this story wasn't finished yet. Morning arrived slowly, like it was unsure whether it was welcome. Pale sunlight slipped through the tall windows of the mansion, touching walls that had held too many secrets for too long. Outside, cars came and went quietly, the noise of the night replaced by an uneasy calm. It was over, at least the loud part. What remained was the truth, settling in places it had never been allowed before. She sat at the kitchen table, the same place where everything had begun. A fresh cup of tea steamed in front of her, untouched. Across from her sat her mother, hands wrapped tightly around her own cup, as if afraid it might disappear. They looked at each other again and again, still half expecting this reunion to vanish like a dream. "I wanted to come back so many times," her mother said softly. "But every time I got close, I saw how carefully you built your life. I didn't want to destroy that." "You didn't destroy it," she replied. "You protected it, even when I didn't understand." Her mother nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I never stopped loving you. I just learned that sometimes love means staying away." Later that day, the billionaire asked to speak with them both. Not in the study this time, but in the open living room, where sunlight poured in and doors remained wide open. It felt intentional. Transparency instead of control. "The investigations will continue," he said. "Everything uncovered last night will be followed through. No deals. No silence." She watched his face as he spoke. For the first time, he didn't look untouchable. He looked human, tired, regretful, but determined. "What about the people who help hide it all?" she asked. "They'll be exposed," he replied. "Some already are. Others will follow." "And my job?" she asked quietly. He paused. "That's up to you." The question surprised her. For years, choices had been made for her. Suddenly, the weight of deciding for herself felt heavier than any workload. "I don't think I can stay here," she said after a moment. "Not like before." "I understand," he said. "Whatever you choose, you won't leave with nothing." She nodded, appreciating the offer, but knowing this moment wasn't about money or comfort. It was about closing a chapter. News broke fast. Headlines spread across screens and newspapers. Words like billionaire scandal, internal corruption, and hidden truths filled the air. Some praised the exposure. Others questioned it. But the truth was out, and it couldn't be pushed back into the dark. Her story became part of it too, though her name stayed mostly protected. People spoke about the maid who saw what others ignored, about the birthday candle that changed everything. But only she knew how small that moment had felt when it happened and how powerful it became later. She packed her belongings slowly. The uniform folded neatly into a bag, no longer something she would wear every day. She paused when she reached the drawer and took out the candle, now burned low and uneven. She held it for a moment, then smiled softly and placed it beside her other things. On her last evening in the mansion, she stood once more in the kitchen. This time, the lights were fully on. The space felt different, lighter. She wasn't alone anymore. Her mother stood beside her. "What will you do now?" she asked. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I want to help people like us. People who are invisible until it's too late." Her mother nodded proudly. "You already have." They left the mansion together just as the sun dipped below the horizon. She didn't look back this time. Some places were meant to be remembered, not revisited. Weeks passed. Life outside the mansion felt strange at first. Quieter in some ways, louder in others. She moved into a small apartment with her mother, learning how to live side by side again after so many years apart. There were awkward moments, missed words, stories that took time to share. Healing didn't happen overnight, but it began. The billionaire kept his promise. Funds were redirected. Wronged employees were compensated. Systems were changed. Not everyone believed his intentions, but results spoke louder than words. For the first time, his name was associated not just with wealth, but with accountability. One evening, a letter arrived addressed to her. Inside was a simple note and a document offering support for education, training, or any path she chose. No pressure, no conditions. She read it twice, then set it aside. Later that night, she lit a candle at her kitchen table. Not the old one. A new one. This time, she didn't hide it. She didn't rush. She closed her eyes and made a wish out loud. I wish to never be invisible again, she whispered. She blew out the flame and smiled. Months later, she stood in a small community center, speaking to a group of women who listened closely to every word. Some were cleaners, some caregivers, some workers who had spent years being overlooked. She didn't speak like a hero. She spoke like someone who had lived it. Your voice matters, she told them, even when it feels small, especially then. Applause filled the room, warm and real. That night, she returned home tired but fulfilled. Her mother was waiting, dinner ready, laughter easy now. They talked about plans, about the future, about ordinary things that once felt impossible. As she washed the dishes, she glanced at the window and caught a reflection. She looked the same, but she wasn't. She was no longer the woman who lit a birthday candle alone in the dark. She was someone who had been seen, heard, and changed the course of lives simply by being brave when it mattered most. And as the quiet of the evening settled in, she understood something clearly for the first time. Sometimes, the smallest light is enough to expose the deepest shadows. And once that light is lit, it never truly goes out.